So we are continuing. I'm not going to talk too much now. So most of the time we are going to dedicate for discussion. What I'm going to briefly review is how environmental policies are relevant for gender equality. Initially, a colleague of mine supposed to deliver this part of lecture, but fortunately I'm doing this in practice. So currently I'm involved in drafting two policy documents. One is a National Climate Adaptation Plan, and the second one is a green agenda, which is encompassing like circular economy, low carbon emission, mobility, everything basically. And it has also this gender component. So I'm basically leading the team with my colleagues on this national adoption, climate adoption plan. I don't know whether you know what's the difference between mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation means you're reducing carbon emissions. Adaptations, you are taking things as given. You know that there's going to be increase in heat waves, that there are going to be floods and other extreme climate issues that are going to happen, and then you have to think how you're going to adapt to reduce risk and exposure to this climate change. So in the case of environmental policies, they are particularly important because environmental policies are, I'm going to focus much more on let's say adaptation and to some extent circular economy, because for low carbon emission you can link this, but sometimes we are really overstretching. We are making, this is what I wanted to state, and in the pause we were having discussion. Sometimes you really overstretch and making these gender issues relevant, even in some cases where this aspect is not particularly relevant. So this is disservice to gender mainstreaming. So basically say, come on, you are making an issue where it doesn't. So we should be really careful not to overstretch. So in that case, I would like to taking this in principle into account, I would just focus on several aspects. First one, why this is important. Women perform 2/3 of the world's working hours, produce half of the world's food, earn only 10% of the world's income, and own less than 1% of the world's property. So basically, that was maybe not the case right now. Maybe certain percentage will change, but this is a dramatic illustration of this inequality. Also, basically, women are generally more reliant on natural resources for their livelihoods, and they do not have equitable access to alternatives such as wage labor and security and benefits as provided. When we are talking about Serbia and some other more advanced countries, this is not necessarily the case. Generally, these environmental policies are especially important for the less developed countries, I would say. Then, because degraded environments means that the women have to access. And this is for Serbia. So we should be also aware about the context in the countries that we are trying to link this. Okay. Okay. What's for us relevant is this statement here. Women have less control and access to land and natural resources than men. In many cases, women are excluded for formal ownership of land. So this is, for example, extremely relevant for Serbia, and policy measures should address this issue. And there are, recently, I think that Serbia, there were several projects that tried to establish actually measurements which would be appropriate for Serbia that would track land management, land ownership, and all issues related to agricultural land especially. There was a project that was relevant for this because this is all related to these SDG indicators and how Serbia can basically fulfill this obligation to have appropriate issues in this field. Also, now we are coming to these socially constructed roles and existing inequalities. That's the reason why women are more vulnerable to the impacts of environmental and natural disasters such as drought, floods, and cyclones than men. So this is obviously not important for Serbia. But what will be really interesting, I don't have it here. I was looking at these numbers, like consequences of floods. Now we had these tremendous floods in Italy. And we used to have these floods in Obrenovac, like 2016, am I right? 14 already, almost 10. Yeah, so these are things that you can look at. So what about the case study? As I mentioned, I'm working with this National Adaptation Plan. So we're trying to address climate change and to see what we can do, what are the measures that we can perform in order to make Serbian economy, Serbian citizens, Serbian businesses more adaptable and more prepared to take risks, to be faced with the risks and hazards that are bringing climate change. And this is also related to a number of sectors. We didn't cover this tourism, but it's, for example, important in Montenegro, in Croatia, and Spain. How many female are working in a touristic sector? If there is a decline in tourism sector because of COVID or something, effects are maybe spread completely differently. So these are things that you need to take into account. Similar for agriculture, forestry, transport. So we are covering a number of sectors, including biodiversity, etc. So this is something that's prepared by a colleague of mine. She's climatologist from agriculture faculty. She finished. She's a, I think, extraordinary professor there. And these are, for example, maps of Serbia. So this is. Please don't. This is something that I need to remove because I just wanted to use it for illustration. What's going on? These are risks of floods, basically, of extreme rain happening in Serbia. And this yellow is low in 2020, but this is what was going to happen from 2040 to 2060. So risks of floods are now tremendously high. So see how this map dramatically changes. And this is going to have probably more impact on women. These are droughts. What we are going to have, for example, if you look at cubic meters of rain per year, it's going to be pretty much the same. But the problem is, we used to have equal distribution throughout the year, basically. And now we're going to have two dramatically different cases where we have droughts and then tremendous amount of rain. So like in Bosnia and Croatia, and it was just a pure chance that this last flood didn't include Serbia as well. So this is something that, for example, we are making now public policies. We are aware of these things. We are looking at what is happening right now, and then we are making projections. So when you're doing public policy, that means that I'm leading a team, but I have a guy who is a lady who is climatologist, a guy who is, let's say, specialist for urban development, a person who is special for energy sector, and then we are taking into account also measures that should help us facing this climate change, and not only climate change, but also to take into account gender aspects. So what if, because we are aware that there are climate change, and because we are aware that there are going to be droughts, the natural thing is to try to improve irrigation systems in Serbia. I'm not talking about a huge irrigation system, but more like a small irrigation system. And that means that you can have a policy measure with a gender equality perspective. So it means that you should then have a specific indicator in this related to this public policy measure. What is the share of women owners in total number of recipients? Now they're not taking care about this, so it doesn't matter. But introducing this aspect, now you have a measure that generally improves and introduces better irrigation systems that are covering more and more area, but also you are introducing this gender aspect. So why we're emphasizing this? In Serbia, for example, women are predominantly the owners of small farms. Not only that, intersectionality now. They're older and less often apply irrigation on very small areas. So if you have women who are owners of certain land fields, they are much less likely that they are going to introduce irrigation systems. Why? For various reasons. No, I'm not going to go into depth now. But they are basically most often owners of farms of small physical and economic size, no economy of scale, no economy of scope. So for them, it's much more harder to obtain resources. So it means that, this divergence and this discrepancy between them and men is going to be even bigger. And almost 40 seconds, this is like assessment. Almost 40% of farm managers are 65 and older. So it's not only that they have this female aspect, but also there is an age aspect that's important. So this is when you are putting all this into context. You are now preparing a policy measures. You are mainstreaming. So this is what we do. So basically, we are thinking through, trying to collect data. Okay, is this relevant? Yes, it is. Why? Because do they have currently measure that's implementing something to reduce this inequalities? No. What we're going to do? Well, they are having already subsidies, but they need to take into account this aspect and to start to collect data and see actually how much of recipients, how many recipients are basically related to these particularly vulnerable groups. So this is basically the essence of how policy making should be in practice. You define problem, you see whether there are gender relevant aspects, you devise measures, and then you monitor by having a proper indicator. This should be also, I'm not going to now show you the whole document. There's an action plan, and in this action plan there is a budget resources that's linked to a midterm budget. Say, okay, this is the amount of money that is going to be used for this, out of which we are going to have indicator. And then the problem is that we cannot set, what is the adequate number? Like 5% of these resources goes to this vulnerable group. Then the problem is whether they're going to apply, whether they're going to be aware. So there are also measures that should be in the very same document that are saying, okay, dissemination of information, how are we going to reach this group? So who is going to reach them? How do we have this agricultural special service, it's poljoprivredna stručna služba, who is basically going to the fields and talking to agriculture producers? So they should also be aware and they should pay special attention. So it's not really easy to implement all these policies. So this is basically the way how, in this is an environmental policy, because we are looking at this climate change, looking what we can, but it also can be a part of rural policy. There is also an additional document that is trying to devise measures with respect to rural policy, rural-related policies. And then they should also have a number of similar measures that are gender equality specific. So this is basically, I try just to finalize now this lecture with this example, so how this is actually taken care of. So all these big laws, etc., and strategies come to the very thing, who's going to get money, how you're going to ensure that this particular vulnerable group is going to get sufficient money to be less exposed to risk, etc. So with this, I finish, and I would like to thank you for your attention. And now, so questions, we already start. Now I'm going to take a seat.
To check whether there is something in the chat.
Yeah.
And also questions from
Chat.
the online participants and participants here.
Okay. Sorry.
And ask them whether they have questions.
Okay. Hi, captions. No. Participants.
No.
It should appear, huh? Are you done?
No.
Co-participants. Yes, captions. Captions.
Other. There
More.
you will find.
I have it. Okay, yes, we can understand. So, good afternoon. Questions. Okay, and from here, public that's present in person. Do you have any questions here?
Are there nothing in chat?
No.
But ask them. Maybe they have some questions.
Well, they can hear me. So please, for those of you who are participating online, if you have any kind of question, practical, theoretical, please write your questions in a chat. So, and I saw that there were one hand. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So in Serbia, are more rigorous sanctions needed in order to make more efficient gender equality?
I disagree strongly with this. It would, to some extent, for example, it would make sense to make sanctions, impose stronger sanctions, harsher sanctions for gender budgeting, for example. But for other things, I'm not sure, because first, I'm not sure that these sanctions will be implemented in reality, and that would even make things worse. So if you have sanctions and you're not going to introduce them, and I doubt that they would be introduced, then it's better not to have sanctions. And you should try to instead of this instead of imposing this, you should try to raise awareness, basically. I'm not sure we are, in that sense, we were talking about during the break. I guess that Serbia was quite open, and then the position of women during the socialist period was actually not bad compared to some other countries. And basically, we had this regression during the 90s. And this is what actually data as well show. It's just symbolic because it's political participation. I would say generally in society, it was regression. And then we are trying to catch up since 2000, formally, informally, because someone is pushing us because of EU accession. So it depends. So for budgeting, yes, because you should really properly devise. But what kind of measures you're going to devise? I'm not sure that we can interfere in each and every case and say you should implement this and this. It's up to them. If they are going to put something and not implement, I'm not sure that harsh punishment is the proper answer.
Well, I just wanted to comment about this. You already addressed in the very end about this dissemination of these new projects specifically for agriculture, because we as a family have some business connected to agriculture. So we are very much aware of all these new policies, all new measures, especially incentives when it comes to regard to women in agriculture. So we know that. But the question is intersection. Me and my husband, we are very young. We are very well versed with internet, with computers, with projects. There is a lot of documents people need to fill in.
Yep.
People from the rural areas.
Yep.
My big question is, how can they, apply for all this? Women 65 years old.
Yeah.
Technology and everything. It's overburdened with documentation and everything. That is, bureaucracy. It's very complicated. So I think that should be taken into account. What you said, you're thinking of some kind of councils or something that will be as a, how should I say, maybe people, some kind of council with people who will actually apply in their name for them. I mean, that should...
Yeah, there is, for example, one option is to have one-stop shops. In the sense that the municipality, and you can basically delegate someone who is going to do all this paperwork for you. And especially it makes sense for these vulnerable groups because their financial literacy is low, functional literacy is low, computer literacy is non-existent. We were recently doing some local development plans as well, so I was doing this as well. And then I was looking for several municipalities, Ivanjica, Smederevo, literacy rates. And then basically now it's getting better, but if you look at this older people group, it's 80% are literate, 20% are not functionally, but they're really literate. They don't have, they didn't finish there. And basically we're talking about them. So this is really a vulnerable group, and you should, state should take care and do something about it. Obviously we cannot solve all problems.
Of course.
But at least some kind of assistance would be
I already see a problem there, nepotism and corruption.
Yeah, to extent, but you know, we know a lot of people from that village where we have business that really, applied, they got, this, how should I say,
subsidies.
Subsidies, which are either 50% or complete 100% of subsidies for
equipment,
whatever there is. It's really, they give to everything. So it's not only, it's okay. There's no corruption at this stage. Maybe there is, but people do get that. And we see development really in that particular area. But generally, Central Šumadija, it's generally, very well developed rural area in Serbia, it's central Serbia. So, but it's okay. And these people are also, people that applied are also people that are now around 40 years old. So they're young and they're,
but this is, for example, more for the second policy document. I said the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and whatever is preparing this new policy document, or its rural development strategy. So for rural development per se, you need to really have all these issues as key problems, and then you really need to think how you're going to address it. What's also interesting that data after the census are actually even worse because they're I would say there is an excellent document, a colleague of ours, Danilo Vukovic, was leading this project. I think this is the best report I read in, let's say, 5-10 years that's prepared in Serbia. It's about human development report. It's excellent. It's dedicated to this demographic issues. Now, when you look this at the local level, this is the key problem, basically. So, and then again, you have intersectionality. You have also this gender approach, but you have age. You have all these issues that you need to take care of.
Professor Sveta Kostić mentioned this demographic issue during his.
But this is excellent.
But also remember Danilo Vukovic and their course on Friday afternoon.
Yes.
Sociology law. So
Valeria is here, so yeah.
Valeria is
so
here.
I don't know. You were working on this HDR or not? No. Okay. Yeah, but it's excellent. So basically,
I have an example for like a measure that was maybe 2 years ago. There was like a measure, subsidies for changing windows for energy efficiency.
Yeah.
And it failed basically because there was not enough people applying for it.
I need to know. I actually know something about it. Unfortunately, again, because there are two issues. First, these are subsidies that are coming from the Republican level to municipalities. Municipalities need to apply, and then they opt what kind of energy efficiency projects they are going to support. So some municipalities simply were not interested in this, which is shameful. In some cases, they were offering programs, but just for replacing, let's say, Windows, but not for installing solar panels or, like some other energy efficiency projects, or for it's not refurbishing, retro, I don't know the word for this. When you're basically trying to make your object energy efficient. So you need to do a lot of things in order to. So it's and what would be interesting is actually how many.
Also, I used to work in the Ministry of Energy and Mining.
You.
That's very good, yeah.
I'm having a breakfast with your assistant minister because I was writing something.
I don't work there anymore, but when I used
on
to
prosumers.
Mikhailovich was in the Gender Equality Council then. So also gender equality was like a very important issue back then. It was like something that we had to look up. Yes, constantly.
So did you do that successfully? Are there any
I can
good
say some
results?
problems, the main ones, that there's not enough staff to do it because in the law department there was just three of us there for the whole Republic region. Second, there's not enough training because I don't have a specific training to do gender analysis or anything of that sort. Third, we're overworked basically. And fourth, we have bad corporations inside the ministry and outside the ministry. So if I need some data specifically, I need to ask a lot of people to get it. And I also need to ask very specific questions to get it. So that's just the first step to actually get something done. And then you have to go through the analysis to get the results. And then you have to get everything signed. And you have like at least 3 people that needs to look everything.
It is civil service.
So at the end you don't know what the result will be. Basically.
Yeah, and what I would like just to add, as I mentioned, is now this council it's abolished.
Yes, it's not.
And then if you go to their website,
Council for Gender Equality.
there is no website anymore. So they need to reintroduce this. At least I was not able to find when I clicked. Nothing happened.
Actually, my friend got the role to be I guess like a subsidy, because before the council there was like an officer, civil worker who was who managed the gender equality issue basically, and my friend had to do that, but she was not qualified. They just told her one day, okay, this is your role now. You will.
I'm not sure whether now they are providing training in National Academy for Public Servants, not NAPA. It's institution that provides training. I think that now they may offer training on these issues. I'm not sure. On gender equality issues. Probably they do.
I really hope so.
But they should.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I really don't know. I wouldn't like to claim that they don't. Probably they do. But I'm just not aware of it. So yeah.
So we mentioned a few times during these lectures in previous days that World Economic Forum report from 2021 says that 133 years, and for some other indicators 140 and more years would be necessary if the current state of inequalities would be waited for the spontaneous, how to say, growth. So that's just to take that as the statement. So my question is, so gender mainstreaming, so the conclusion is that gender mainstreaming in different spheres for education, it's very clear, I think, and the spring school is a part of gender mainstreaming in higher education, legal education, etc., etc. And I hope that one day it will have an impact on the legal professionals in different fields, because if they get this gender competent knowledge and sensitivity, most probably they will implement that in their professions. That is one. But now what I want to ask you, can you sum up all these things which you were talking about from the strategic level to the policy implementation level? What would be, in your opinion, and due to everything what you said, what would be the crucial steps or factors of the fostering, of pushing forwards, boosting the gender equality. This, what this report says, to be not to wait 133 years, but to make it.
But this report is
reality.
related to the whole world. It's
Never
not-
mind, metaphorically, even metaphorically speaking. So, what is your opinion about which dimensions of the policy making, of policies starting from the strategic level to the policy implementation would be crucial, in your opinion, for fastening the process of gender equality realization?
Oh, it depends. But
Educate, gender mainstreaming of
I believe,
education
yeah,
for sure.
I believe, yeah.
Agricultural, local community level.
I would say education.
Political
Education is the key.
education.
Education is key because there are tremendous different returns to education throughout the world. And if you reduce this gap, especially in particular countries, then you are basically the most important part of the gap is going to be reduced. Second is ownership and how you are going to. But then again, this is not just related to gender because this divergence, basically, an increasing inequality gap, it's not related just to gender per se. Obviously it is, but there is tremendous. Yeah. But it has also gender aspect, and basically this is just a part of the package. If you want to decrease this inequality, you should take this into account. But if you're just focusing on, it's just going to give you zero results. So my point is that gender equality is not policy per se.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a part of the other policy. It's just the accompanying aspect that you should take into account.
And that's why we are putting the focus always again on intersectional approach, also to the gender inequality.
Yeah,
Because
again.
then poverty.
Yeah, again, for me as an economist, honestly speaking, when you say, because this is a different field of social sciences, and when they're talking, this is like a different jargon. And when you talk about intersectionality, this is something which I always use take into account. So for me, this is like a non-novelty. It's something that I have to take into account whenever I do certain research, because I always not look at just one aspect of person, but look at all these dimensions that are relevant. But what I would say is also, I guess, some things are distracting. So I would say that a number of these issues are not as important as reducing this inequality gap. So we are distracted with a lot of other issues in this field, like, and these are far less important for society, for welfare. Again, I'm talking as an economist, because I would like to have 100,000 people satisfied. For me, this is much better than just having two. So it's I don't know whether you understand what I want to say.
I understand, but maybe I was not clear enough. When we speak about the global pyramid of inequality, at each level there is gender-based inequality.
It is.
Also based on class, race, cultural differences, etc. So in this pyramid of nations and countries within this pyramid, we have this huge, basic level of
There are major
poverty,
differences.
and there women there are.
Well, we are. I'll have to look at some global trends and projections in the forthcoming months for some projects. So then it will be really interesting for me to see actually what people are saying, where we are going to end up in 30 years from now. So what are the projections? So there are like several global projections, like OECD is producing one, which is long-term. Then you have some EU and others. And they are discussing these issues. So this is even a better reference than what you mentioned, World Economic Forum, because this is just like a big statement just because it's catchy. So we don't know. I don't know where we're going to end up because we have this AI revolution, which is now occurring, which is going to tremendously change again society. A lot of jobs will be redundant. So I don't know whether these jobs are more populated by men or women. So this is something that a lot of things is going to change, and I'm not sure how these changes are going to affect men or women. Who is going to be affected more? A default question is women will be more affected, but I'm not sure about this. Probably it is, but still, this is not the only part of the answer. It's like, there are other intersectionalities that we need to think about, like age gap. People who are older are going to be long-term unemployed, both women and men.
IT literacy or illiteracy.
IT, digital, there are a lot of digital gap.
Digital gap.
So there are a lot of these gaps. Yeah. So there are a lot of these things. So again, for me, gender is just one aspect that I need to. I look always at these other sections or whatever. I like, especially age, educational gap. It's really, really important. So again, this is my message. This is extremely important, but always think about other aspects and other dimensions, because if you are preoccupied with this, you're not going to achieve the results. So
but I repeat once again that if we are occupied with gender, we are doing that in an intersectional
exactly.
way. Then you take into consideration all those other. So you do not estimate gender, but also you do not reduce all. You do not focus only to that, and then underestimate all other very relevant elements of gender.
The second question that's important: to what extent you really want to impose this value system on other countries, and whether they are ready to accept it. That's a tricky question as well. So,
of course.
So we have the results of elections 3 days ago. So I don't know, in Turkey. So I don't know whether you saw statements. So this is also something that's tricky. Probably you not be able because majority votes in one way. So how you need to protect rights of minorities. But then again, it's not a question for me, it's for...
Yeah, but the question now, when you mentioned Turkey, as we heard 2 days ago about the CEDAW Convention, when it was, revoked, 85% of people were against that revocation. So it was Erdogan's decision. And Istanbul Convention. CEDAW, or
But still, he got...
So it's not always it was the majority against it,
but small majority. Yes, very small majority.
Yeah, it is. But it's going to be
a divided society.
So we are as well. So all societies are more or less divided. So the gap is okay. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention again.